Okay, everybody, quick show of hands. Nobody's yelling at you. You didn't get written up. Your boss isn't even a bad guy, really. But some mornings, you pull into the parking lot and you just sit there. 2 or 3 extra minutes, radio's off, you're not doing anything. You're just not ready to walk in yet.
Yeah, and if somebody asks you, like, why are you actually doing that? I don't know that you could actually tell them why.
Yeah, because there's no story. You'd sound crazy if you tried to explain it. Like, I don't know. I mean, work's fine. I just don't want to be there.
So that's the whole episode today. Not the dramatic version where you get passed over for some promotion or somebody says something that's just terrible and ugly and cruel in a meeting. We're talking about that quiet piece of this, that version that, I mean, it doesn't have a headline. It's just not dramatic.
So, welcome back to the nature of everything. I'm Bo.
And I'm Clint.
And a quick orientation if you're new here. Everything we do on this show runs through a framework we call COIN. It just means you're getting honest about where you actually are. You're taking ownership in your part of it, and you're doing something on purpose to change it. And then you're watching that change when it comes.
Yeah, so look, you don't have to memorize any of that. We're not going to lecture on it. There's actually no exam. You'll just get a chance to see how it works today in episodes like this where we work through an actual topic.
Yeah, so if you want to go deeper on this, it's all laid out in the book, The COIN Framework, at thenatureofeverything.com.
But for now, let's just beat up today's problem.
Yeah, and today we're asking the question a lot of people are sitting with, and they're not saying it out loud. How do I know if I should quit my job?
This is the nature of everything. Don't stay stuck.
All right, so here's the thing I want to untangle first, because if we put this in quotes, should I quit? It's actually at least two different ideas sort of dressed up the same way.
I agree. So break it down.
All right, so the first idea is this. I don't like this specific job. That's one piece of it. I don't know what it could be: bad manager, bad boss, wrong fit. The culture doesn't work for you. It's even a toxic culture at that, if that's what it is. It's just a shit work environment. That could be part of this. But these are things that you can point at specifically. You could list out. If you had to walk up to the whiteboard and write these things down, you could do that.
However, shit job.
Shit job, right?
Bad boss.
Exactly. So idea 2, however, is I don't actually know what I want. This job just happens to be where I'm working when I realize that. So you hear that? Like, I don't know that I know what I want. I just know that I'm at this job and this just happens to be where I am.
And those two things, they really need two different kind of fixes.
No, completely different. You're absolutely right. So you could quit the first one tomorrow and feel better in a month. You could quit the second one, and the fog's probably just going to follow you around to whatever your next gig is, whatever next building you're working in, whatever next cubicle you land in. The second one's, it's going to follow you around as long as you just stay there.
Okay, so how common is this actually? I feel like everybody complains about their job, but is that just what having a job is?
That's what adulting is, right? It's more specific than that. And again, it's a lot less dramatic than most people think. So Gallup runs a yearly State of the Global Workplace report, and they've done this for, a decade now. In the last few years, the numbers have held steady around 70%. So 70% of employees worldwide who say they're not engaged at work. 70% of employees worldwide say they're not engaged at work. They're not miserable. They're not in crisis. They're not in danger. They're just not present.
That's a pretty huge chunk of people who are not present.
Yeah, 70%. They're not on fire. They're not excited to be there.
So it's not that people hate their jobs. They just kind of stop showing up for the job.
Yeah, that's the way to put it. It's just the light went out. The fire went out and nobody noticed, because everything that is the daily goings on, it still pretty much looks the same from the outside.
That definitely sounds like corporate America. and I just want to sit with that for a second, because I think that's the part people miss. You don't need a crisis to justify feeling this way.
Mm-hmm.
Like somewhere along the line, you got told that you have to have a crisis to feel unhappy.
Yeah, and that really is the trap, right? Because people wait for some big enough reason to finally leave, whether it's a blow up with the boss or you're getting passed over for something that you know damn well that you deserve just didn't happen, or I know specifically like layoff scares. Like that's a huge one for sure. Something that is so dramatic that it justifies your decision and the decision everybody gets it, so that if one of these things can happen, well then nobody can look at you like you're being somehow like irresponsible for quitting.
Yeah, I mean, those are huge, right? I mean,
Hmm.
as if there's something wrong with saying, I just don't feel like myself there anymore. Like that
Yeah.
just doesn't sound like a real reason. It sounds like you're just like bailing out.
Well, and what's really crappy about that is that that makes it sound like you somehow haven't earned the right to make a change that you want,
Mm.
you know, or maybe even to yourself, it doesn't feel like maybe you don't even feel like to yourself that it justifies that.
Yeah, I don't think I would.
I know, I get it. I get it. And so I think way too often, you know, we're just bad about sitting in it. And I'm not talking like a week sitting in it. I'm talking about years, like waiting for someone's outside permission. And I hate to be the spoiler alert guy, but it's not going to show up. Like nobody's going to necessarily provide that permission for you. But for some reason, we sit around waiting for this imaginary permission to show up in some form that will give us the justification to move on to something that does fulfill us.
I think sometimes when we are feeling that way, we kind of trick ourselves. What's funny is like, everybody, and I mean everybody, we've all updated our resume at some point and we never sent it.
I I definitely think that's universal.
Like, we're getting out of here, people.
Yep, I'm
We
out.
we open the document and we fix that formatting issue that Microsoft Word sucks on.
Yep.
And we had a bullet point, about some project from 2 years ago that produced some result. But it's sort of a little rush of like, yeah, look at me. I'm doing something about this. And then you save it and you close your laptop and nothing happens. Nothing changes.
Yeah, so the question is then, what is that then? What is that actually?
Well, it's not job searching.
No, no.
It's basically like a magic trick that people do to themselves, and they rearrange a few bullet points, and the brain goes like, "Great, we handled that." And then you get to feel like you took some kind of action, but you didn't risk anything. It's, just cleaning out a junk drawer and calling it renovating the house.
All right, but I'm going to tell you this. Hold on to that resume because we're going to circle back around to that. But it's about to be homework.
So look, there's a second layer to this too. And before we get into the framework side, it's not just that people wait too long to ask the question. A lot of people never separate the ideas that like I'm bad at this job from this job is bad for me. And those get treated like the same sentence and they're not even close.
Break this down a little bit further because I think the nuances of what you're talking about are, I think it's brilliant.
All right. So, like this, you can be really good at something and get praised for it and get promoted, and still it's just kind of the wrong thing for you.
Hmm.
Being good at a thing and it being good for you are two totally different things. Just because you're good at something and everyone around you, including you, they recognize that you're good at it. And so everybody just assumes it's fine.
Yeah.
We need to write a book called It Ain't Fine.
It ain't fine. Fine is bullshit. I agree. To your point, I mean, that really is a big one. If we're not careful, competency can become its own little trap, its own little prison, because you get really good at whatever this thing is. And it almost feels as that if you leave that, if you go to do something else, it's almost like you've wasted this time or you spent the time in the wrong place. Even when you know that staying in this particular job or this particular office or whatever it is, you know that it's costing you as well.
I like that idea that it feels wasteful. And
Mhm.
as we've been talking about this, I was thinking about how it feels ungrateful, which is
Yeah.
wasteful, ungrateful. They're similar, but there's even another side of it. All these feelings, they don't stay at work though. They ride home with you.
And you carry those negative things with you. Like it shows up with, I mean, you know when you're not patient with your kid, once you've gotten home and like it's something small, shouldn't
That
piss you
was
off,
that
but
was yesterday.
right? And like you're sitting at dinner and your other person telling you all about their day and you're kind of nodding along, but It's kind of like being at work in the way that you're just not present. I'm not saying you're not happy at home. I'm just saying that you're not present. And so you're just losing interest in all this stuff that you actually do have a passion about, things that you do enjoy, but you're missing these things because you're spending your downtime like trying to avoid these things instead of living your life.
Yeah, people think they have a work problem, but it's just a whole life problem. It's just kind of centered around work.
And that's the thing, is that you got to figure out where that focus is.
That's why it's worth actually looking at this instead of just pushing through another Monday.
All right, so quick pause before we get into the second half. If any of this is landing for you, whether it's idea 1 or 2, or any of these things are happening, the resume thing, competency traps, any of this stuff, if this is making sense to you, the book is where you get the actual language for working through all of these things for yourself. It's not written about quitting your job specifically. However, it is sort of a field guide for issues such as this. It gives you the vocabulary to examine anything in your life that you want to own and be intentional about, whatever it turns out to be.
And if you'd rather sit down with somebody and work through your specific situation instead of doing it all by yourself, that's what coin sessions are for. Real conversation and zero generic advice.
Both of those are ready and waiting for you at thenatureofeverything.com.
Clint, I think we've got two kinds of people listening. One kind already knows in their gut which idea they're actually in, and the other has no idea. And that's exactly why we're here.
Yeah, so first thing with this, and this is the part where we get honest about which of these scenarios are you actually in. So here's the question to ask yourself, and I mean out loud if you have to. Am I unhappy with this specific job, or am I unhappy because I don't know what I actually want? It just so happens this job is just where I am. It's where I happen to have landed. It was the one that was open. It was the one that was offered to me.
Yeah, you can't fake your way through that last one. What do I actually want? That's a
Now,
tough one.
it is a tough one, but I'd say here's a decent test. If you're unsure about where you stand, picture the dream version of this particular role. Like whatever you're in, give me the absolute perfect version of this. Same company, same title, same position that you have, but somehow it's really working for you. It really just drives you. Does that picture in your mind, if you put it together like that, does that give you relief?
Or do you picture that and still go like, well, still though?
If it does relieve all of that, then that's idea 1. It's the job. That makes that pretty simple. If it's still muddy and gray and the best case scenario version of this, the ideal piece, well, if that's not giving you relief to see it that way, then most likely you're dealing with that second scenario piece. It was never really about this particular job or the company or your professional choice.
Yeah. And if you admit that it's the second one and you really don't know what you want, that's more uncomfortable.
It does come with some discomfort, but this is the opportunity for you to own your piece of this. And the question here, I mean, it's a little sharper. Where have you been avoiding the conversation or the decision to move on to something else simply because it was easier to avoid it and not have that conversation, not deal with yourself about this?
Yeah, it's really easy to make the job the villain and
Mhm.
yourself the victim, in
Mhm.
that story. And sometimes it's fair. Look, some jobs suck. Bad things can happen. Sit with the question for a second. Is there some conversation that you've actually avoided because it was uncomfortable? Or are you just staying because it's less scary? Because you're not staying because it's actually good.
Make sure that you understand none of this makes you a bad person. It doesn't make you a failure, and it doesn't make you behind anywhere. You haven't missed the train to goodness somehow. Like, spoiler alert again, this just makes you human. But as we've always said, you can't fix a thing that you won't name and you won't admit that it's at least partly yours. All right. So look, this is coming back around. This is where your resume comes back into play.
God, the homework.
You're welcome. All right. So, updating your resume it isn't necessarily the move, right? It feels like progress, but it really isn't intentionality. It's just some motion and probably not necessarily the motion you need. The actual piece of this is to question some things and put some items into perspective. For instance, what's one specific move that I can make this week that has real teeth to it, that really gets some traction? Something that I couldn't quietly undo or forget by the end of this work week. I mean, it's something that we got to put in place.
Yeah, and maybe that's a real conversation with your manager about what's not working, and not that vague sort of like, well, I'm just kind of been feeling kind of off. I'm talking about like a real conversation or an application sent, not drafted, sent, or leaving. Or if leaving isn't realistic yet, maybe it's an actual number, a real dollar amount in savings that has to hit before you can responsibly take a hike.
Yeah, but for this particular scenario, updating your resume, that's not the step. That doesn't count this time. We're
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
further than that. That doesn't count.
Yeah. Sending it somewhere. That's what counts.
Yeah, that's a whole different piece, right?
All right. So this is where everything would actually shift. The question to sit with here is what would actually be different at home if I stopped just dreading work all the time?
I think, to your point, I think that people underestimate that piece of this terribly.
It's not just that work gets better or it can get better or you change something. It's all the byproducts of being intentional. It's patience with your kid. It's being present at dinner instead of just somewhere else in your head, or having energy left on a Saturday that you can actually enjoy instead of just honestly just sort of emotionally recovering from a week
Sure.
of crap that you didn't like. The job was just never a job. It's the thing that it either feeds your life or it just quietly drains it.
So the question was never really just about the job.
It never is. Welcome to Coin.
Mhm.
So, look, before we roll out today, if you know somebody who talks about how they hate their job all the time, like it's a life sentence, or somebody who's thinking about updating their resume again, send in this podcast.
Absolutely. And look, if you're the person who needs to actually sit down and map this out with, somebody else instead of just running in circles in your own mind and being awake at 2 a.m., just mad at the pillow because it's hot and you're still not getting through any of this stuff, that's what coin sessions are for. So if you want to get in touch with us, by all means, come to the website, thenatureofeverything.com, and look us up.
And don't forget that the book is there too. If you want the tools and the vocabulary to actually work through some of this on your own, that's what the book is for.
All right, so take the time this week, do your homework, make a stand, do something that's got some teeth to it. Get an application sent, have that conversation, do something. But remember, figure this out. Is it that you don't like your specific job, or is it that you don't know what you actually want and the job just happens to be where you landed? Those are things that you need to confirm and own so you can be intentional about what your next steps are going to be.
Yeah, and that's going to change the nature of everything, and you will not stay stuck.
Before you go, just know it's time. Time to connect. Time to change the nature of everything. Find us at thenatureofeverything.com and don't stay stuck.